What is Tennessee's greatest recruiting asset? I'm giving you these options because we're not going to get into playing time and legacy and all that stuff because that's very individual. But as a whole, culture, facilities, playing style, NIL. Go ahead and vote right now on our YouTube page. Caleb, what's number one?
It's NIL. It's NIL. And it's not NIL and what you can offer the player up front. And I have to be clear about this. And this is what I talked about with support system. It's not, oh, Tennessee offered this player $800,000 and the other school offered them $600,000. No. With these top-notch players, and Dave, you know this, recruits are smarter than we give them credit for. They're not doing what you quoted Calipari as saying don't do. They're not tripping over nickels in search of millions. They know they're NFL draft picks long-term. They're thinking more. So they're not going to waste $100,000 at this school or that school. They are thinking more about what school is going to develop them the best and things like that. Where the NIL is,
that's still a lot of money, though. I mean, again, if you're talking about the difference between $100,000 and $200,000 for a family that brings home $80,000 a year, I mean, that's still a factor. I'm kind of supporting your point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but it's the depth of NIL for Tennessee is the selling point, which is to say that their NIL plan goes far beyond what they can offer you on the front end. And I think that is the selling point, which is, look, I've been in negotiations. I was in negotiations with Dave. I was in negotiations with other people. One of the things that sold me with Dave, I'll tell you guys straight up, is he told me, this is what I can do for you now, and this is what I expect to be able to do for you in 3 years if we get this thing going to where we want to go, and this is what I expect to be able to do for you in 5 years if we get this going where we want it to go. That is how Tennessee is approaching recruits right now. They're not just saying, I can do this for you right now. They're saying, here's what I can do for you if you do your part to help us get to this level next year and the year after that and the year after that. That's the NIL that no one talks about, that Tennessee is far ahead of everybody else in college football on that front.
Can I tell you how important this culture is to the point that it pissed a lot of people off?
Let's go.
Okay. The culture is so important, and the history of this program. And guys, I want you to listen to me really closely. And then I want to go to Elias's point. NIL opens the door, culture finishes the drill. I'm going to twist that a little bit. There are a lot of former players that were asked to come back to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the 1998 team that weren't too keen on it because the previous coaches treated them like trash. Derek Dooley, you had to call ahead and get some sort of pass to get in. Butch Jones, you knew he was a doofus. Jeremy Pruitt had so many things going on that he didn't have time to go out and hire other. He didn't have the wherewithal to hire other people to handle these sorts of things so that you bring the 98 team in. They're going to have a Champions Week this upcoming year. That is culture too. Having the fact that Josh Dobbs still loves you, even though things didn't go well, that the 98 team still loves you, even though it's been 25 years. That all feeds into culture. So Elias said, and you can vote on our YouTube page, Elias says NIL opens the door, culture finishes the drill. Not to get in semantics, but I think culture and early evaluation and early relationships open the door. And I think NIL is an obstacle that doesn't exist. Maybe David Sanders went and shopped himself around. Maybe Ohio State offered him more money. Maybe Tennessee matched it. But if it was comparative money, I think the culture would win out. That's why I think culture is Tennessee's greatest recruiting asset. You can vote on our YouTube page right now. Culture at 66%, playing style and NIL at 17%. So we didn't factor in playing style, but except for defensive backs, this playing style is pretty much fun for everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why defensive ends are going to playing style is unique to certain positions where I've told you guys this, edge rushers are taking a discount to go to Tennessee right now. They are going to Tennessee for less money because they're seeing what they're doing with other players more than even receivers or quarterbacks. Jordan Ross is at Tennessee because he saw Byron Young and James Pierce. Let's call it what it is. That guy in any other era is ending up with an Alabama under Nick Saban or Georgia under Kirby Smart. So culture gets you in. I'm not denying that, Dave. But see, we're kind of saying similar things, though, because what you say is about culture, I actually think is part of Tennessee's NIL recruiting method. You're talking about the early evaluations. That's their support system where they are evaluating kids. And guys, go look it up. They're doing their research on kids when they are freshmen in high school. I mean, they are projecting where they're going to grow into. Stuff that you and I would have said was impossible back in the day, right? Remember, you were always told you shouldn't offer like a 14-year-old or 15-year-old because you don't know what their body type. Tennessee has a system where they already put fillers out there so they can get ahead on these guys, and then they're already ready by the time they're 16. They know what they're doing. And I don't consider that part of culture. I still consider that more administrative. So I think the biggest thing, if I'm going to be honest, Dave, Tennessee, it's not a selling point per se. Administrative leadership is why Tennessee's recruiting so well. And that starts with Donde Plowman and Danny White. And I mean, they are helping Josh Heupel in Tennessee identify this elite talent early. And they have also put together an NIL plan in place that allows Tennessee to add players in. I'm not saying culture is not a factor, but I'm sorry, I don't buy and I never have and I never will, unless you're Peyton Manning because you are of such means. But not even Peyton Manning. What am I saying? He committed to David Cutcliffe. He says he committed because he likes Tennessee. No, he knew what David Cutcliffe could do for him. I still think players are committing. They're not being like, I feel so at home here. I just love my teammates. No, I think they're still making business decisions at the end of the day.
Well, no, I agree, but okay. When I came to you, if you had 4 other people coming to you at the same time offering you the same thing, you wouldn't base it on money. If they were all offering you about the same thing, you base it off, I like working with Dave, or I like working with Bob, or I like working with Joe a little bit more than the other guy. There are other factors because everybody has NIL now. I don't think that there's a school in the top 25 right now at this moment. I do initially. I think Tennessee was way ahead of the curve. I don't think there are schools that are having to scrape up money to get top prospects. I think those schools in the top half of the Big Ten and the SEC and a couple in the ACC and the Big 12, they've got all the money they need.
No, but it's not about the money they're offering up front, Dave. It's NIL, but not in terms of NIL money they're offering up front. It's the NIL money they can promise you on the back end. It's what they're saying they can do.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
For staying. I got you.
For staying. Yeah. Yeah. What they're saying is they're not just saying, and this is what Louisville and Ole Miss and Georgia Tech tried to do, which is, we'll just throw some money at recruits and, we're going to be awesome and call it a day. What Tennessee is saying is they threw money at one recruit to get a splash in Nico Iamaleava. There's no denying that. They opened the checkbook for Nico.
Had to do it and did it at the right time because everybody else was afraid to do it.
Exactly. They did what they had to do, and they knew what they were doing. Since then, their pledge to athletes ever since then has been this. Don't look at what we're promising you on the front end. Look at what this can become. Dave, you told, and I'll be full disclosure because I told Dave when I first started with him, this place I was at before actually initially offered me a little more money, but Dave had a great point. He's like, what they're offering you now is what you're going to make there in 5 years, and it's what you're going to make there in 10 years. And I had to take a leap of faith with Dave that what I'm getting with him is that's not the end all be all. This is where I am now. But he laid out a vision and told me this is where we can go with this company. And this is what you can get out of this. That's what Tennessee's doing with these athletes. They're saying, yeah, we're offering you this now. But this is where we can go. And guys, for the record, Dave's delivered on everything to this point with me. So it's
well, I appreciate that. And we wouldn't be what we are without you. But I would say this too, to your point, and maybe I undervalued that a little bit. If all you got to do is go to Cooper Mays, I don't know what Cooper's making, but I think it's strong 6 digits. I'm completely guessing. He's never told me on or off the record. Okay. I do not know, but you go to the center, the center's usually not the highest paid player on the team, but he's busted his rear and he's put on like 30 pounds of muscle, and he's changed his entire physique, and he turns out to be one of the most valuable players on the team. And I guarantee you he's getting strong 6 digits. You want to look at James Pierce. I know he's making $1 million. So, yeah, you show up, and it doesn't take long either. I mean, he had that commitment to make $1 million this year shortly after his sophomore season.
Yeah, this is the thing. It is a backhand. It's an around the way incentive based contract, isn't it? Like how the NFL does incentive based contracts. Tennessee's doing incentive based NIL. They're saying we can
with trust, with trust, which is kind of
trust. You're right, and they're establishing trust, but they're proving it. What they're saying is we're not just going to open. We'll give you some money to come. Yes, because every school is giving money, and we'll give you comparable money. What they're saying that other schools can't do, and this is what they're doing with their collective. They're saying this is what we can get you if you deliver and perform for us. And these other schools can't do that, and they're not promising you that. And we got you taken care of all the way through. I mean, this is. Let's take this example, Dave. Before NIL was a thing back in the day, one of the selling points for Tennessee, and you know this, and this was a big thing, was they had such gigantic companies as boosters. You knew for a lot of recruits knew that if their football career didn't work out, they could take a really cushy job with one of these companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
That wants to take care of former Tennessee players. And Tennessee now is doing that from the NIL perspective of, don't look at what you're being offered right now, even though at the same time, what you're being offered right now is competitive with everybody else. It's just what we can offer you on the back end is so much more going forward.
And you know, it doesn't take much to screw it up, right? I mean, and I'm going to give you a prime example of an SEC school that screwed it up, screwed NIL up, and they'll never get it fixed. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. This school used to be one of the preeminent schools in the nation, yet they couldn't get their stuff together in NIL. And where are they now? 30 seconds, and I'll tell you. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Caleb, where do you think Florida is rated in recruiting for the 2025 class? The state of Florida is one of the most talented in the world, the nation, the universe, the cosmos when it comes to football players. Where are they rated? 2025.
I'm going to say 42.
Well, then you thought they were worse than they were. 30.
That's still bad. That's still bad.
Oh, good Lord. I mean, you have to be in the top 15 to even think about competing for a championship. You have to be in top 10 to win one. You have to be, in my opinion, right around the top 5, which Tennessee is at 6, to eventually potentially win a national championship. But why are they 30th? Because Jaden Rashada showed up to their campus and his money that was supposed to be there wasn't there, Caleb.
Yes, exactly. And this was the difference between Tennessee and Florida. It's funny. So, guys, for those of you, we've told this story before, but we have more listeners now, so we're going to tell it again. Dave, I started with Dave in August of 2022. And Dave had just gone to SEC Media Days and heard that Florida had a total discombobulated NIL collective. They were way behind. They didn't know what they were doing, and it was awful. I pushed back and I said, because I had reported on All On 3, which had just released the largest NIL collectives like that week. And I said, Florida's like top 5. Florida's going to be good. And then we had a disconnect. We're like, what's going on? How could Dave hear this at SEC Media Days? And then I see this a month later. 6 months after that, the Jaden Rashada fiasco happens. What we found out later was Florida had a former ball player, I think with the Mets. Of course it'd be with the Mets because, that's what they do, who played for them. basically rushed together to cobble an NIL collective to say they had a top 5 without the money actually being there, and ran a Ponzi scheme, if you will. And I think that turned out to be a disaster for Florida, because think about how pathetic this is. Florida's 30 in recruiting. We talk about location advantages, Dave. Not only is Florida the best recruiting state in the country, Florida, the Gators, are in the best position to dominate the state better than they've ever been before because of the whole conference realignment thing. Florida's the only one in the SEC. In Florida State, we all can see he's desperately trying to get out. They just got left out of the playoff and undefeated. Miami's stuck in that conference too, and Florida still can't dominate the state.
And Miami's the only program that we talk about on any sort of regular basis that still has facility issues. I mean, their poor students have to bus 45 minutes to get to the game. You know, it's just they are the one program that tries to play football and tries to be smart. It would be like Vanderbilt if they tried to be competitive. Come on, you can do one or the other, but you probably can't do both. And that's what the University of Miami is trying to do. And I agree with you. I think Florida's right for the pick. Let me ask you this before we get to this day in Tennessee sports history. What would be better for Tennessee? Finishing, or let's say, making the college football playoff and they lose the first game, or Florida somehow winning 8 games and Billy Napier's around another year? I think Billy Napier in Gainesville is gold for the Vols.
I do too, but I think the former still works, because even though Tennessee and Florida theoretically have a historical rivalry, there's no SEC East anymore, and they never really compete for the same recruiting prospects a lot of times. So, I mean, I don't remember, the only one I remember the most was Travis Henry as a Florida kid that really entertained Florida, but I don't think Steve Spurrier wanted Travis Henry. So maybe you know more about this than I do, Dave, but whenever Tennessee gets kids out of Florida, let's call it what it is, that's usually where they get the most problematic character guys, is out of Florida, right? When they come to Tennessee.
Demetrius Morley, Keith Richardson. Excuse me. Okay, I want to ask this on the before we get to this day in Tennessee football or Tennessee sports history. Are you willing to root for Florida in hopes that Billy Napier keeps his job? Because I think you should, except for when they're playing Tennessee.